experience with this remote platform and at the ATW Executive Leadership Forum. And you will definitely have a fantastic session in this particular hour as well. I'm going to introduce Arushi Srivastav. Arushi is a senior director at NTT Data and has been actually doing several initiatives recently on smart cities. So she's a great moderator for this particular topic, and she will introduce our speakers for this particular topic. So Arushi, take it away. Unmute yourself, Arushi.
Okay, it did. Can you all see me and hear me? I hope so. So hello, everyone. I am Arushi Mccullough. Okay. So I'm Arushi Srivastava. I am very excited to be joining you all today to talk about something that I'm deeply passionate about and which is making our world smarter and more connected. As Kala told, I lead the deployment operations and expert services teams of NTT's Smart Solution Group. We create smart solutions for different verticals, but our primary focus has been on smart cities. So for past few years, I've been working on emerging technologies such as IoT, artificial intelligence. At present, my team is working on implementing these technologies where they can be most beneficial, smart cities, smart public transportation, and whatnot. So that brings us to the topic of this session, because one of the first steps in making a city smart is to get it connected. And I have two wonderful speakers who will enlighten us more on this topic. So the first is Annie Bogue, who is head of sales and marketing in Fujitsu Network Communications. She joined Fujitsu as a production planner in the operations group and found her calling in sales, establishing herself as a leader and working her way up. She has been a key contributor to Fujitsu's rich history of loyal customer partnerships, from several accounts to many small local telcos. Hi, Annie.
Hi.
Hello. I also have Doug McCollough, who is the CIO of City of Dublin, Ohio. While talking to him prior to this session, I understood his passion for smart city as well. And through collaborations and partnerships, he has worked to connect people to opportunities, remove barriers, and promote change in initiatives ranging from smart and connected cities, IT workforce development, expanding broadband access, and connected autonomous vehicles, and blockchain in government. So, Doug, hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you.
Hello. So I cannot wait to start this conversation, and I can see there was a lot of excitement in some of the groups that I talked to earlier in the lobby as well. And so let's get this started. Doug, starting with you, are there? Can you just tell us a little bit about the Connected Dublin initiative?
Absolutely. And first of all, whenever I talk about Dublin, I like to remind people we're talking about Dublin, Ohio. There are several Dublins outside of Dublin, Ireland. We are all named after Dublin, Ireland. We sit on the northwest corner of Columbus, Ohio, right in the middle of the state. So we're in central Ohio, if you're wondering about that. Most cities, pretty much all cities today, are engaged in smart city of some sort. And we were a little concerned about jumping into that before we really understood it. And so Connected Dublin is the result of our study and our understanding of what do we mean by smart city. There are a lot of different definitions of it. And Connected Dublin is our branding of that initiative. For us, a smart city begins with broadband as a foundation. We have a fiber network that we've had for quite some time. And that is the foundation. Communications is the foundation of much of this stuff. From broadband, we go to devices. You're a fan of IoT. We are talking about sensors and cameras and devices such as those. With those devices, we gather data and we use that data and analyze that data to generate insights and intelligence so that we can make more intelligent decisions. And one very important thing from that I take is also feedback. So not only do we have the data, we understand that data, but citizens and people and businesses need to actually receive that data and have an opportunity to give feedback as well. So we are a region and an area that is very interested in connected and autonomous vehicles. We are a part of the country that deals with manufacturing and the automotive industry. And so we also feel like we're a great testing ground for connected and autonomous vehicles. So we're doing a lot of that. I also mentioned connected information as well. We find that when you start connecting things, you realize just how disconnected you really are. And something that we like to talk about in Dublin also is connecting people, connecting families and schools. So it's not just about the data and the devices and the IoT, but also connecting institutions, connecting businesses to government, to universities and higher education and K through 12 education and other institutions. So that's an important part of what Connected Dublin means to us. And then finally, we're part of a larger district of connected vehicle research, and we call that district the Beta District. And that is our bid to attract companies and people and innovators to our region of the country. And that includes the city of Dublin, the city of Marysville, and Union County. And we have the 33 Smart Mobility Corridor, which is a 35-mile stretch of corridor designed to allow companies to come in and really do testing on connected vehicles and smart mobility. So that's Connected Dublin.
That's great, and it looks like this is not just a strategy project, right? This is a continuous initiative which keeps getting evolved. So, where do you would you say you are in your journey, Doug, in this Connected Dublin? Which are the areas that you think you all have grown a lot, and which are some of the areas that you still wish you would make more progress?
Well, I mean, we're one of the more advanced communities, I would say, but it's responsible to say that we're really at the beginning. I believe all of us in smart cities are very much at the beginning.
Yeah.
Even if you are fortunate enough to have devices all over the place and fiber and telecommunications and a great data layer, I still believe that you're at the beginning because we're trying to put some of our gains into context, and then a lot of things are changing. I'm sure we're going to talk about crisis and COVID and social justice and all of the things that we're facing right now. But when we were doing smart city initiatives a year or two ago, we did not anticipate a global pandemic. And so we've learned quite a lot from that in all areas of smart city. So I believe this is a time of very intensive learning. I do put us at the beginning, but at the same time, I think we've learned so much about really scaling devices and data and intelligence and analytics. That is, I think we know what we know. And at this point, you just really got to pile in and put as much as we can, as fast as we can, still being responsible.
So you mentioned, Doug, about COVID-19. So Annie and Doug, you all are seeing, and we all are experiencing this firsthand, be it any corner of the world now. So how do you see smart city technologies and connected networks, etc., enabling our response to such an unforeseen situation?
Do you want me to go first, Annie, or you want to?
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I would say that one of the first things that we learned with COVID-19 is the importance and the priority of being able to accurately speak to citizens and businesses and really all of your constituencies with a trusted, credible source of information regularly. And then to be able to measure the response of your information to see if if it's working. Some lessons learned that we have, that not really thinking about smart cities yet, was that the best of information and the best of intentions could wind up with disinformation, rumors, and rumors spread like wildfire. And so the ability to monitor and observe people's behavior and their reactions to information that you are trying to give them became more important. So whereas previously we had some channels that were not the most important thing in the world, they became all of a sudden, you really need to be able to monitor those channels for their effectiveness and see how people are reacting to the information that you're giving. We kind of felt like lives were at stake and that. One other aspect of smart cities that we often don't talk about as much is just the internal operations and administration of the city. And so dealing with staff and being able to get information and operations efficient and effective quickly, crossing silos, because we've all have silos in our organizations, became pretty important. And so having devices, having data platforms, and having communications tools were, brought front and center. And, that has been a big part of our response. And I think a lot of cities to this time in this crisis.
Yeah. And would you like to add of something that you've seen?
Of course, I would love to. I tell you, I think I really realized when the pandemic started just how critical the networks really are, right? Because, you guys both said earlier, you don't have smart cities unless you're connected, right? And in order to have the connections, you have to have the network. And I think like within our company, especially having sales and marketing, I had been saying, wow, the network is so important. And as we move towards the 5G era, it becomes critical infrastructure, and, it's going to enable all these really important things that, the low latency and the connection is critical, like related to healthcare or autonomous cars. And then COVID-19 happened. And I was like, immediately, wow. I mean, I think Anne said this earlier, or maybe it was in the next session that I went to, that it really accelerated everything by like years, and it became really clear that without our broadband connections, we can't do anything, right? We can't order groceries, right? We can't work from home. We can't, the kids can't go to school. And so, I think that responding to that and really understanding that importance that we now play from a networking perspective is so important. And then I think that really accelerates a lot of the things in terms of our smart cities. And I, would just take a moment to tell you guys, I live in San Francisco, and I hope we have to get into, Doug, the discussion about the privacy and security kind of trade-offs, because this is something I'd love to hear you talk about. But I tell you, a global pandemic, fighting social injustice. Now on the West Coast, we have wildfires everywhere. And yesterday I woke up to an orange apocalyptic sky. So most of the folks out there, I'm sure by now, have seen some of the pictures from the Bay Area yesterday, and it was crazy. And according to all the data, I guess the air was healthy to breathe because everything was trapped. The smoke was trapped above the marine layer, right? Well, today the sky is like white and yellow and really smoky looking, and there's ash falling on my patio. So I was thinking about this earlier, and I mean, I rely on the Doug McColloughs. I need the city officials to tell me whether it's safe to go outside. I mean, it really is a different time that we're living in, and we trust our cities to keep us safe, right? To keep us secure and really give us the information that we need to function in our daily lives. And I was also just thinking how much that's shifted, right? It's just everything has shifted so much in the last few months. So I think that your job is just even more critical than ever before, as a citizen.
No, you're absolutely right. And Annie, something you mentioned in there, which we do need to talk about. And every time there's a conversation of smart and connected cities, privacy and security bubbles up to the top of the concerns.
Yeah.
So, Doug, what do you think? Some people say that it depends on the region and the country where you are, that privacy and security's definitions keep changing from city to city, from country to country. Some people say it's global, it has got to be the same, but we already see that there are different standards across continents and different expectations. But what does it mean to you when it comes to security and privacy of smart city implementations?
I'm glad you mentioned that there appear to be different standards, because our cultures across the globe, we have different levels of trust and histories with government, with authority figures, with truth, and that affects what our expectations are. And you can give someone a world-class, absolutely wonderful privacy and security regime in one place, and in another place they will be offended by it. And so that feedback loop of being able to understand what people's expectations are, I do believe that customization becomes very important. In Dublin, we're blessed to have a very diverse community, internationally and particularly. We have a very large Japanese American population because of certain companies that we have there. We have a very large Indian population. We have a very large European population, as well as other groups. And the expectations are different. Going back a moment to what we were just mentioning a moment ago about networks, it's interesting that up to now, developing these systems meant that segregating networks was the way that you maintain privacy and security. But in a smart city context, especially when you're talking about what you've been talking about, Annie, with environmental conditions can change in 4 hours. And so you need data from your weather system, from your emergency management, from your local government, perhaps from your state government, perhaps from researchers and analysts, and that needs to be pulled together quickly and on the fly. How do you do that when you've air-gapped your networks and those kinds of things? And then deliver it to citizens, whereas you may want it in a certain way presented, another person may have a different level of trust with that same government or those same agencies. And so the complexity level has gone way up in terms of what do we even mean by security and privacy? Whereas we wanted segregated networks, now we want a unified network. And when the crisis is over, we want segregated networks
again.
So there's a level of automation and sensitivity to the moment that is necessary. I think we found that human interactivity has been working pretty okay. As organizations around the pandemic, we got together in a conference room before we all went home and said, okay, what's our plan? We came up with a plan and responsibilities and things.
Right.
We need our technology to be responsive to that. So I probably have more to say about privacy and security, and they're not the same. But I just wonder, am I on the right track there? Do you guys see some of those same priorities?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I hadn't really thought about, like, does it go back? I guess you're right. It can. And I was definitely thinking, so I'm a devout yogi. So I think everything in life is about balance, right? Work hard, play hard, do yoga, drink wine. That's how I think about privacy and security, right? It's like a fine balance. But I always, I think, was in a different place. Like I've never had a Facebook account ever. And in my mind, I just felt like that was something, it was a privacy thing for me. Right. But I do, I'm on LinkedIn, I do other stuff, but I just think my personality was a little bit different. I think in the last 6 months, that center of balance for me has moved. And I think that it has for a lot of people in this country. I think that we're willing to give up a little bit of privacy to have more security. And that's a trade-off that it'll be interesting to see, because like you were saying before, like I want you to tell me if it's safe to go outside, and I want to know, maybe I want to know if the Trader Joe's parking lot is overflowing and I shouldn't even bother, I should have my groceries delivered or something. But, over time, does that go back the other way? I'm not sure. But it is interesting, though, how it's a balance and how maybe that balance has shifted, I think, for people.
Yeah, I think it does go the other way. I was asked about contact tracing by a city council member.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? And this is a very delicate privacy kind of an issue, which does shift and change. So I think we need dynamic systems, and thinking about a smart city would treat different contexts differently. So today I wake up and there is a hurricane and I'm in Louisiana and the entire area is flooded. I want the authorities to know who I am. I want them to know where I am. I may want them to know certain medical conditions about me. I want to be rescued, and I want that, and I will share that. I should be able to make that setting change in the future. That's what I think we see. But now it's a sunny day and I'm on vacation and I'm out with some people and I don't want anybody to know who I'm with. Yeah, right. I don't even want you to know my name. And who are you, government, to know that kind of thing? So it's a different context, and I should be able to be in control of that because my privacy needs change depending on my context, and my security needs, same thing. In one context, I need to protect a lot of things. And in another context, like, for example, here in this conference, you can kind of click on somebody and look at their picture and their name. And that's fine because we've kind of have a social contract. We've agreed to get together.
Right.
In another context, I don't want you to look at my image, So those are the kinds of things that I feel like cities should develop the governance around so that we can offer to citizens and consumers the ability to have services that manage those kinds of things,
Right. And then the technology infrastructure also, I feel, is still a little behind in making these changes dynamically and really user controlled so that you can very easily flip through these settings. Not as easy as you could do it for your apps, but enterprise-wide, it becomes tricky situation. Doesn't matter if you're on cloud or not, or
Right.
you have on-prem systems. It's about, I think, the maturity of these enterprise-grade solutions that I think we still lack the whole velocity that we need with these changes. So I think that brings me to one of the questions that I see on the chat here. And I am seeing, so Vibha asks this, Doug and Annie, I can see the trusted partnership in that as consumers rely on cities giving us accurate communication, and cities rely on networks for delivering those messages and connecting people. My question is to Doug, as to what innovations have you witnessed in your dealing with healthcare institutions during this pandemic, whether it's faster data collection, any automation, standardization, smart solutions? So that's first question, Doug, for you. Have you seen any innovations when you're dealing with healthcare institutions during this pandemic?
For me, working with a government, the innovations that I have seen have not come directly from the healthcare institutions themselves, but have come from emergency management and resilience types of organizations, such as emergency management. In our area, Franklin County Emergency Management shifted into being the clearinghouse for information. And some of the innovation might be, I don't know if you remember much earlier on at the beginning of the pandemic, we believed that there would be much fewer beds, and certainly many communities around the country experienced that, and some others didn't, but we prepared for what we thought might be the worst of it. Yeah. And for us, that meant tents in parking lots. And so you needed to be able to scale up and put 300 beds somewhere quickly. And so the interactivity with hospital systems and healthcare systems became something that was an innovation, in my opinion. And again, so the hospital didn't step forward and say, everybody listen to me, we figured out what we need to do. We centralized those kinds of interactions with our emergency management because we had practiced for emergencies and crises, but we did not know whether it would be a terrorist attack, a weather event, an environmental event, social unrest. But in our region, at least, we followed those particular protocols, and then we used technology to try and automate and enhance the effectiveness of those protocols.
Great that you mentioned that. Being as part of NTT, I think we serve a lot of healthcare organizations, a lot of providers, and we never thought, being those back-end IT operators, we would be fighting COVID-19 on the front lines. So there were IT service support desk people who were in those tents trying to make sure that those health systems are connected, working fine. If there is any issue, they could actually switch over them to another network, static, localized networks. And there were people, IT support desk people, who were in the healthcare tents fighting COVID-19 in places like New York. Early on in the pandemic. So yes, there was innovation like we never expected.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There is a follow-up question as well. Is the 5G pilot with Fujitsu going to be used for any healthcare or any other COVID application?
Well, good question. So I didn't give you too many details about our 5G pilot with Fujitsu. So allow me to just say it is on a smaller scale. We, the city of Dublin, wanted to get some experience with 5G. Mm-hmm. And I love this pilot because I was talking to one of the engineers on it the other day. Mm-hmm. It packs about 5 or 6 different technologies into one solution. Mm-hmm. So it does use 5G, but it also uses fiber. Mm-hmm. And it also uses camera-based analytics, but then it also used edge compute. And so we have a lot of radio communication. So analysis is happening on the edge and not traveling back to a data center. And then we're just gaining insights. To me, that's a whole smart city microcosm. Mm-hmm. We actually have a parking application. We are observing the behaviors of cars in a parking lot, and that's working out well. I think that it leads to other use cases. We had not talked about health as one of those use cases. Mm-hmm. As a city, we tend to be biased and be really thinking about infrastructure. Yeah. That's how cities think. Mm-hmm. They think about roads, fires, fire hydrants, sewage, big movement. And if you have that, your city can pretty much be successful. You can figure everything else out.
Parking.
Traffic, exactly. So what we really wanted to do, or what we think initially, is using these cameras and 5G and fiber and edge compute and analytics on the back end to observe other things, especially with regard to traffic, mm-hmm. movement of vehicles and pedestrians, and gain insights from them. Not specific to healthcare, mm-hmm. But I think we'd be open to continuing that exploration as well.
All right.
But Doug, tell them you did have like a COVID related. You guys, yeah, with the cameras, yeah, where you could see whether people were socially distancing or not.
Yeah, what we learned during the pandemic, mm-hmm. as you guys recall, it just came faster, even though we had so much time to prepare for it.
Yeah,
just the rules, and so now we're communicating with the public, and we're saying, okay, from this date forward, you need to stop doing these activities and start doing these activities. And we found that the data that the cameras and the analytics were throwing off actually proved out the compliance that we were seeing in the community.
Okay.
So everybody worked from home, and this solution happens to be in our historic district where our retail and restaurants are. So we did not ask the system, hey, are people complying? We just noted major dips and changes in the data. And when we began questioning that, we said, well, why did this parking pattern change? And why did this human behavior pattern change? We were able to say, oh, that's because of the rule we put in at this time and this date. Interesting that our technology was able to reinforce and prove for us what compliance was doing. If we had known beforehand, we can do this with pedestrians, we can do this with mass compliance, whether people are 6 feet apart and waiting in line to get into buildings,
Right.
Which a lot of people are doing now, but we didn't have that idea until we saw the results of our data during this time.
Right. I thought that was really interesting. And also just the importance of the data, right? Like Doug was like, the more data he can get his hands on, the better. And, you know, that's the most important part. And I think that's the key, right, to a lot of our smart city applications and how we can use that data for good.
Yeah, I agree. We start out with a intersection or with a street segment or something like that. But ultimately, you're trying to measure human behavior and gain insights from that. And so the more installations you have, the more sophisticated you get.
Right. That's so true. And I think you mentioned there's smart parking. Could you just tell us a little bit about that? What was your smart parking implementation all about?
Also interesting stuff to me. And if you don't have, you know, Arushi, you focus on smart cities, so you probably think about this stuff. But a lot of people would look at this data and say, well, that's not really very interesting. But the bottom line is, if you can measure the number of parking spots in a lot and the number of cars in those parking spots, we actually have maybe a 1.5, 2-minute delay between measuring those things, then you can communicate that information with a driver who's on their way and has to choose between 5 different parking lots. So don't go to that parking lot, and don't do street parking, and don't go over there. There are 72 spots available in this parking lot. Right. Now you're not circling, and so you're reducing traffic congestion and you're reducing fuel consumption. And these may be small amounts, but the more data you can give to a driver, the more you can influence their behavior, which can improve your sustainability goals. Right. So that relates. The other piece of this is, what are the patterns that occur over time that those retail and restaurant and vendors and businesses, because this is an area, as we said, that is dependent upon foot traffic. So what are the incentives and things that we've put in place that actually increase foot traffic, but that foot traffic may be limited by the fact that you have problems with knowledge of parking availability. Right. And so you want to actually take both of those behaviors and measure that. And so it's been really fascinating, and it really should scale.
Right. And that's something that we had been actually, I was a part of, we did this implementation in Las Vegas in some of their innovation district that they have defined. And I think the most interesting to me is when I can merge a few different data sets. I can see changes in the crime patterns by as simple a thing as maybe putting smart speakers, smart cameras, doing multiple things at a time, not only giving the cities the crowd patterns and stuff, but also telling them the insights by putting this, what kind of, or things like if there is a violation, if there is loitering happening, or in Las Vegas, we have the showgirl sign, the famous where everybody goes in to take a picture. But city has put in a lot of money to put that sign and which lights up and everything. But people actually climb on that and harm it, right? So, how do you protect such things? And by same camera that you are using for crowd patterns, etc., you could also use them for things like if somebody's trying to damage something in the city, which is important for you. So yes, I'm very fascinated by not only these reactive things, but also when the data starts coming together and you start getting insights that you could not think exist? For example, the crime patterns, how they.
Yeah, if I could add one more in there, and anyone who deals with cities and thinking about this, there's a delicate balance in parking turnover, and many suburbs do not charge for parking. That's how they make money.
Yeah.
That's how they attract people from city centers. So if you have free parking for 2 hours versus free parking for 3 hours, how do you make a decision as to which one of those you choose? In the past, you take an intern with a clipboard and you count cars, and you're using humans to try and generate insights.
Yeah.
It's extremely inefficient. And with this technology, you can do this in real time and perhaps even have dynamic turnover. But you do have these arguments between businesses who want more customers and cities who want more visitors.
Yeah.
So they want people to be there all day. Yes, I want you there all day, but I want you to move your car and allow somebody else to come into the restaurant. And so it's surprising just how much data feeds into policy development potentially.
Right. I have another question here. Doug, how will you and your team justify the investment in the rollout of smart city technologies for Dublin's Phase X?
So I will say and put out here that when you're talking about smart cities, there needs to be a little faith, and there needs to be some view of the future. Unlike other government expenditures where something breaks and you replace it, or there's fires over here, so you put fire hydrants in, we have to put in technology that we expect to generate insights that are good for us as a community. There are numerous justifications that fit very nicely in an economic model, whether it be sustainability goals or economic development accomplishments, increased safety. When a community has its goals clear, using some of this technology that you can prove makes an impact generally allows the justification to take place. I'll give you an example. A lot of people will justify new equipment because it increases safety. If a pedestrian is not going to get hit by a car, you can't put a price on that. So you can kind of pay for that. But that same technology then can be used for enforcement and for other things and saving money. So it begins to cascade, and you build trust in the community, and people say, I like this program. I like Connected Dublin because they've saved money, they've increased safety. Let's give them a little bit more and a little bit more. It's not whole hog. It tends to be, you have to prove yourself by starting with a pilot and scaling up eventually. And the city of Dublin, the residents are very supportive of what we've done because we've proven the value at every step of the way.
That's a great point, creating those feedback loops early enough and engaging your community so that you have their support and scaling this up. So I have another question here, Doug. With rising concerns about companies selling people's data, some smart cities may want to use data as revenue source. How should a smart city manage and utilize data of their citizens? This is from Echo.
There are a lot of questions about monetization of data, particularly for cities, and I'll add some more color to that question. We need to start thinking about significant changes to our tax revenues. Taxes, as they have been structured, may not be a reliable way of having kind of the same amount of income during the year to deliver the services that you've been used to. Mm-hmm. And this year's economy is proof of that. I believe that there are ways of benefiting from having data that do not involve selling that data. I believe you can benefit economically from this. I also believe, and I'm going to go out a bit into the future a little more controversially, that when people have more direct control over their data, they can share in that monetization. So now, instead of thinking of your government being someone who compelled you to give them the data, you didn't have the option to refuse, and then sold that data or made some money on it. Instead of that scenario, you are beginning to gather your own data. We will ask you for permission if we would like to do an insight with it. And then there's a monetization opportunity that we will, as a service to you, allow you to monetize your data. And then because we're delivering a service, maybe we take a fee for that. But that's a different balance. we are now making possible the benefits to the community. And maybe that's not direct money into your pocket. Maybe it's to your schools or your parks or something like that. But if that if that data analysis has value to someone such that they'd be willing to pay for it, let's pass that on to you, and we become a service provider, not the direct beneficiary.
Okay. I think there is another one for you, Jack. What is your biggest daily security threat? DOS, malware, anything else?
Well, any great security person would tell you that the biggest security threat is internal. It's either a mistake by a person or a deliberate act of human beings who are inside your network. And so trust and those kinds of things are really the biggest threat. We know what our sensitive data is. It's tax data, it's health data, certain things like that needs to be kept private. And so the biggest threat is that we would have put a bunch of technology in place to protect it, and a bad actor would come along. And so the ability to detect behavior patterns that can tell you where you have a bad actor or making mistakes. We follow the same concept that security education is money well spent. And so we have spent a lot of money and time and training, just training people and beating it into their heads about how not to make some of those phishing mistakes or those kinds of things. Yes, we fear and worry about malware and ransomware. And so our backup regime is very robust. Anyone can get hit, but we have prepared our staff for, if you're on a 1-day backup, be prepared to lose a day's data, you know, and if you can live with that, then we're okay. But we have to have real conversations about data and what can we afford to lose and what can we afford to be exposed because it was public data. We have significant conversations about that.
That's good. Annie, there is a question for you from Maureen. She asks, Annie, what are the public backlash concerns that need to be avoided as we educate, market the public on smart city technologies?
Public backlash, like I guess I'm not clear. I can't imagine the only negative or backlash I can imagine would be around the privacy type stuff that we talked about earlier. Maybe she could clarify. Certainly, I'm not the city expert. What do you think?
I can clarify. I mean, we do get backlash. One of them is money. It's just expense.
Oh, that you're spending. So it's public backlash that you're spending money as a city on something that someone thinks might not be necessary.
Well, that's one of them, that you're spending money. And then also some of the equipment. There are people who have concerns about 5G. They have concerns about the beautification of the area. People do not like to see broadcast equipment on top of historic poles. There's backlash that you're paying more attention to this side of town and not that side of town. So there's equity backlash.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So my expertise, Maureen, is more on the networking side. Doug definitely understands the city piece of it much better, that's why this has been such a great collaboration for us to really, understand, layering these different use cases and what's going to drive smart cities and 5G era moving forward.
I do have a question for you, Annie, which says, how have you seen customers' operations being impacted by COVID, and how has Fujitsu supported them during this crisis?
Well, definitely for us, I think I talked about this a little bit at the beginning, how, there was kind of that panic, right? That about everyone's broadband connections, did they have enough speed? So a lot of our customers, we have a lot of carrier customers, all the network owners. So, there was kind of an immediate panic, right, about being able to supply equipment, making sure their networks, critical infrastructure was supported. So we put together like a rapid response team right away that people could call one person and get whether they needed, technical assistance or network design or, supply chain, which we had to work really hard to make sure that with all the supply chain disruption that we were able to cover enough equipment to get out to everyone so that they had what they needed to keep the service going, because a lot of people were wanting to order a bunch of extra to protect, a little cushion. And so that working through all that really took some time. But I think we did a pretty good job in taking care of our customers. It's really interesting now, though, there's still such an emphasis, of course, on the broadband networks, but there's also so much uncertainty with, small to medium businesses and the impacts of the economy, right? So a lot of our customers are starting to see declines because of that, and a lot of uncertainty, looking forward for sure with the forecast, because you just don't know, right, what's happening with the economy right now, as evidenced by the stock market on a weekly basis.
Right. So we are nearing the end of it. I guess before we just call it closed, Doug, a question for you. Would you like to make some prediction about the technology after seeing what has happened? Are there going to be any permanent changes after COVID-19?
Well, I don't think we're going to go back in terms of the technology. Technical advances tend to be a little bit more permanent. I dream of, and I hope that we will have a future of hyper customization, as I've been talking about, that allows people to make the decisions about how they interact with information and services. It's got to be custom, and for cultural reasons and for a million different reasons. And I think that that's coming, but it's going to require a level of compute and low latency networks that we don't have yet. So I think where we started now with the crisis is table stakes, and that's the new baseline. And I think we will get very hyper from here.
That's great. Annie, how about you? Would you like to make any predictions?
Well, I mean, I'm a little biased, but I definitely think that we're going to see more and more open networking. So, and when I say that, I mean on the wireless side, like for O-RAN, I mean on the transport side with open line systems and ROADMs. I think that open networking will have to happen in order to break up a lot of the monopolies, to drive more ecosystems. Then, that's going to drive a lot of system integration work to tie everything, back together. But that's what's going to increase the speed of innovation that will enable all the technology. So I definitely think that's coming, and it's going to come faster.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess we are right on time over there. I think we had such a wonderful session, and just for the participants, everybody in the audience, I think this was one of the very few panel sessions that went as fluid as it was. It was we just took the questions and went with it. I really enjoyed talking to you, Doug and Annie, and I hope everybody who attended this also had fun. We have Kala here.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah. I wanna thank Doug, Annie, and Arushi for this wonderful session. I am actually fascinated about all the things that you're doing, Doug, in your city, and obviously the infrastructure and the kind of the under the layer kind of things that Danny's organization provides. And I just can't imagine kind of the disruptions that some of the innovations you all will be actually doing will cause, for cities. I think it's just amazing. So thank you so much for this fascinating session. And for all the audience, we're actually concluding this session. Once we conclude, you can actually return back to the lobby to join the VIP networking session. And hope you will continue to enjoy the conference. I also want to do a shout out to all our sponsors, without whom this particular conference wouldn't be possible. So I really, really appreciate that. And I really want to say thank you again to our speakers and moderator. And let's go back and maybe party in the lobby. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.